Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
On this week's edition of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, we discuss spending in MLS. Is there a correlation between big spenders and success? Kenny Price joins us from the 19th minute to discuss FC Dallas news on and off the field. And finally, VAR had some controversy this week in MLS. We look to discuss those as well. All this on this week's episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Steven Jodaran. Across from me is Armand Kafai.
Howdy, y'all.
How we doing, folks? Episode 6, right?
Yeah, we've made it through 6 episodes.
6 episodes, and boy, is this going to be a controversial one.
Yeah, I mean,
VAR lit it up, but that will be our third segment, listeners.
Our final segment.
First, we're going to talk about the spending in correlation to MLS.
Success.
Do you think, without looking at in the research or knowing what you know, do you think it actually correlates? Like you see PSG, for example, is a perfect example. Spend. Manchester City, spend, and success eventually does follow.
I don't think it's like that in MLS. I think it's more on a moderate scale. If you spend a little bit, you'll be fine. But I think with the restraints on the salary cap and whatnot, there's a lot more parity compared to those leagues.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Sure. So, but the MLS player payrolls were released April. So it's been a couple of months. Mm-hmm. As of 2017, do you know who number 1 is?
Giovinco, is it not?
It's Toronto. Not player. Oh. This is team payrolls.
Yeah, Toronto, yeah.
So then you have NYCFC, Orlando, Chicago, LA, round out the top 5.
Right.
But if you look at the standings, Toronto, NYCFC, Chicago are all on top of the Eastern Conference.
Right.
If you look at the Western Conference, it's the Dynamo, Seattle, Sporting KC, and FC Dallas, although FC Dallas does have 2 games in hand, so you have to throw them in there. But those clubs, on the other hand, FC Dallas
are the lowest spenders.
FC Dallas is 17th.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Red Bulls, who are actually 4th in the East, are in 14th. Houston at the bottom of the league.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think a substantial amount of spending is needed for MLS success because of the restraints you have with the salary cap and whatnot.
Sporting KC 16th, right? But that's just the sample size is only of this year. So if you continue back to, for example, 2016 payrolls, what were they? Toronto, NYCFC, LA, Orlando, Seattle. Again, round out the top 5. Colorado that year when Jermaine Jones was there last year was 6.
They went to the conference final.
Yes, they were in conference final. At the bottom of the league was Dallas, DC, Columbus, and Chicago. But if you look at the standings, guess who was first? It was Dallas, then followed by the Colorado, then the Galaxy. In the Eastern Conference, it was the Red Bulls, NYCFC, and Toronto. Okay, fine. Extend that to another year, 2015. Toronto, LA, NYCFC, Orlando, Seattle Sounders. What were the standings then? Again, New York Red Bulls were at the top. Yeah. But guess who was spending more? It was their rival NYCFC, and they finished outside the playoff picture.
The playoffs that year, right?
No. Dallas was in first place in the Western Conference, and they were 19th. Actually ahead of the New York Red Bulls. So it's a mixture of spend and not spend. Like, I feel like you either are one extreme.
Yeah,
you are at the bottom,
spend a lot or you don't spend.
If you spend somewhat, you're in the middle. That's weird.
That's really weird. I mean, but it's a structure of the MLS, the salary caps, and trying to keep parity and whatnot.
Yeah, no, but I don't know. It's really interesting because I think now, as the league progresses, you are going to see the spending to increase. Obviously, you saw with the transfer of Paul Arriola, $3 million.
Oh yeah, and
I mean
Carlos
that's
Vela coming also, and
yeah.
all these big names coming in.
That is increasing the amount of money that clubs have to spend on their payroll, and it's not fair because if you look at the player payroll of 2017, Sebastian Giovinco makes, or is it Kaká? Kaká is the most gets paid the most, and it's about $6.5 million. At $6.5 million, that is more than FC Dallas, New England, Minnesota, DC, Montreal, Houston spent on their team as a whole.
And here's the thing: how's Orlando's on-the-field success been?
Slacking.
It's not been as good as some of those teams down there.
No,
which is
it
a really
hasn't.
interesting case study to think about.
But do you think that you need to spend more?
As a team, I would strive to spend more money, and I think the league is pushing that way, especially with the new contract with Adidas, that new $700 million uniform deal. More money is coming into the league now than ever. Those expansion fees that'll be coming in shortly. The league is going to be having more money than ever, and they're going to give those teams for them to spend. That's why you have GAM, TAM, all those like weird acronyms implemented. So the league is going to be spending more. I think the league needs to spend more on those mid-tier players, not the biggest, not the worst, but those mid-tier players that make up the depth and whatnot. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. And if you look at player salaries, Kaká, Giovinco, Bradley, Pirlo, Villa, Dos Santos, Schweinsteiger, Altidore, Dempsey, on and on and on. It's only a handful of clubs.
Right, exactly.
Orlando, Toronto, NYCFC, LA, Chicago, Seattle,
because
Portland,
what big name does
Colorado.
want to live in New York or LA?
Yeah.
Why would they want to go to Columbus? I mean, no offense to Columbus. I mean, I could say the same thing about Dallas, but
Colorado to an extent too.
Yeah, I mean, no big name really wants to go to those clubs.
No, not at all. And if you think about it, and you really, really mess around with it, is the on-field success of spending money there to a degree, but you don't have to. The thing is, New York Red Bulls and FC Dallas have the two best academy programs.
Right, exactly.
So if you take those out, then suddenly the spending does become important.
Would have to be.
Right, but the question is, should you be spending for these big names? Kaká, Giovinco, Bradley, Pirlo, Villa,
if
Schweinsteiger.
If I was an MLS general manager and I was looking to make the most successful team on and off the pitch, key thing is on and off the pitch, I would go for one of those stars, but I'd throw in a young South American, kind of like a mixture of what Chicago's done by bringing in, let's say, a Schweinsteiger, and what Atlanta has done by bringing in those younger South American players. Because in the end, those younger players are going to be the ones that are going to be the face of the league sooner or later, to be honest.
I mean, Atlanta is 8th in 2017 when it comes to team payrolls. With
the payroll, but I mean, they also spent a lot of money bringing in Almiron
and
Martinez
and
Villalba.
I mean, that's the thing is, but you have to look at it as club exposure for Toronto, NYCFC, Orlando, and now Chicago, LA, Seattle, Portland.
There are always the games on national TV.
And Atlanta now. That's the list of the highest spending clubs. What do they all have in common? They're relatively successful.
Big market.
Besides for Orlando and LA, successful big markets, soccer-based fans. I mean, true passionate fans, and they're on national television. That's brand exposure. So Toronto probably is making up quite a bit of that money when it comes to ticket sales,
stadiums and whatnot.
Yeah. And you want that success to continue on through the playoffs.
Right.
Toronto made it to the
MLS Cup.
NYCFC made it.
Lost to Toronto in the semifinal.
Chicago, we'll see what they do, and we'll see what happened, because Colorado's a perfect case. They spent a lot of money last year. Yeah, they got to the conference final, but look where they are this year.
Yeah, Colorado's an interesting case. I mean,
they lost Jermaine Jones, and that puts them literally right in the middle when it comes to MLS spending.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So even with Gashi and Howard is one of the top.
Howard makes
is the 11th highest paid player in MLS.
Really?
Yes.
For a goalie,
as a goalie.
That is interesting because I can name some goalies that are maybe not as good as Howard, but up there, and wouldn't be worth $1 million.
So as a MLS owner, let's put our MLS owner or GM role, because it's the owner that pays the check.
Right.
If you are paying Kaká 6.5, let's say 6.5. Now it depends on bonuses and all that, but the base salary is about $6.5 million. Is it worth it for Kaká?
I would say no.
No. Okay. Sebastian Giovinco, 5.5.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Michael Bradley for $6 million.
I would say so. Yes.
Pirlo for 5.5.
No way.
David Villa for 5.5.
Absolutely.
Giovanni Dos Santos for 3 3/4 quarter.
Yes, for his off the field marketing and whatnot that you could do with it.
How is Giovanni listed 6 and Bastian Schweinsteiger, who makes? Giovanni Dos Santos gets paid a lot in bonuses.
Yeah.
The base salary is only 3.75, but when it comes to actual cash, it's 5.5.
Yeah. Schweinsteiger, I would say yes as well.
Out the door for
Yes.
about 5.
Yes.
Clint Dempsey, 3.2.
Yes.
So it's weird because the spending is worth it. When it comes to these players, are the most marketable players in MLS.
And that's why I said if I was a GM, I would get at least one of these players for on and off the field success. But you can't load yourself with players of designated player. Like, you can't load yourself with, I would say Kaká, Dempsey, and let's throw in Michael Bradley. I don't think you can have all three of those. I'm not saying have all playing style wise, but I don't think it'd mesh well, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. And what's crazy is Colorado, for example, they have the 10th highest payroll, but 2 players are making about $3 million. $3.5 million. Gashi's making 1.5. Timmy Howard is making about 2. When it comes to Colorado, it's 7.2. So add the math. So 2 players command about 40% of what they're paying their players. That is something the MLS has to get rid of. As Major League Soccer continues to grow, you cannot have players make millions of dollars, and then you have a player who's making $50K.
Yes, and that's why when you look at a lot of the Liga MX MLS matchups, you look at them, and you see that maybe 1 through 10, the teams are really competitive with each other. But outside of that, the substitutes, the reserves, they don't even compare.
Wait, what do you mean?
They don't really compare. As in, look at them. 1 through 10, MLS and Liga MX, they'd be competitive. But put in the reserves, put in the bench, put in the backups, there's no depth in MLS. Let's be honest here. I don't think there's any depth in MLS. Mm-hmm. Now, teams can have sides with a lot of depth, but name one team that could keep up depth-wise if an injury crisis depleted them.
I mean, honestly, nobody. These players are so vital, especially the big ones, Sebastian Giovinco, Michael Bradley. And it's becoming interesting now. You're seeing a shift, obviously, the last several years, away from the older European players to younger South Americans.
Right.
Look at Atlanta United. What do?
They go out, they got Almiron, they got Villalba.
Exactly. They're spending
all these youngsters.
They're spending this money on the youngsters. Now, the question is success. What is success in Major League Soccer? Is it making the playoffs? Is it winning the Supporters' Shield? Is it winning MLS Cup? What is the most important aspect to success in Major League Soccer?
I know it's the same for you. It's the same for me. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. MLS Cup.
Okay, thank you. So the Supporters' Shield is meaningless. The U.S. Open Cup could be something fantastic.
But right now, it's meaningless.
It's meaningless.
Right now.
What does the winner get? $50K?
I think it's $250K.
$250K?
And a CONCACAF Champions League spot.
So, yeah, okay, maybe it's a little bit more. But that $250K is nothing.
Yeah, and MLS doesn't really do much to... Not MLS, I'm sorry. U.S.
US
Soccer.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Doesn't really do much to help promote that cup, because I'm telling you,